How's that?
Very good. So you all enjoyed that. It's a fabulous show, isn't it? Fabulous looking show. And for those who aren't familiar with Mark's work, he shot countless of commercials for companies such as RSA, and clients such as Adidas, Coca-Cola, Philips, Mercedes, Heineken, Rolex, Pirelli, Chrysler, BMW, Ford and Bulgari. And his feature film work consists of Morgan from 2016, I believe, for 20th Century Fox, and The Minutemen, which is in post-production.
That's correct, yeah.
And shooting for Ridley Scott, his second unit and additional photography on The Counselor, Prometheus, Exodus, Gods and Kings, and The Martian, and his television work is McMafia, Hannah, Pennyworth, that we've just seen, and of course Taboo, which Mark won, very well deserved, won the BSC TV award for photography in television, and also nominated for. Yeah, also got him a BAFTA nomination as well for that. So yeah, very, very well done. And this is the first time the BSC are really showcasing work in the realm of TV drama, because it's a medium that, quite frankly, no filmmaker can ignore. With all the platforms of HBO, Netflix, Amazon, Stars, all these very large American platforms and British platforms, they're giving filmmakers a real new voice, and we're filling a kind of a void of between kind of independent cinema necessarily and television, and there is a very large void between the Hollywood work, and this gives us, a language to really explore this area, which is pretty amazing, really, and from a man that comes from a very kind of diverse background of commercials and feature films. What made you take that leap into television drama?
Coronavirus. No, thank you very much, everybody, for coming along tonight. I know it's been, whether you're walking the streets, stalking with this thing, but I think the objective tonight really is just to show how the rise of episodic, big budget, big TV has enabled cinematographers and DPs to really show their work. I mean, I sat there tonight watching the first half, and I've never actually seen it on a big screen. And the question that was at the back of my mind, is it going to hold up? And I kind of felt that it does, in terms of how one treats the image, how one frames the image, because this constant call for coverage, and yet I'm hoping that in the hour that you just witnessed, that you want to watch another 10 hours.
I do. Yes, we do.
And that's kind of interesting, because 6 years I got my two very good friends here, Cara and Rachel Taylor, my agents, who, when I said that I think there's something in this, Game of Thrones was in, season 1, and they were whacking themselves in the forest. And I said, I think we're onto something. Can we explore this and go into this realm? Are people willing, to watch 10 hours and invest in 10 hours of TV? And from my perspective, I was very lucky to have grown up in a commercial world. So the minutiae was always photographed, and I was told it's got to look absolutely spot on, and then was allowed to explore the rise of content. And content, I think, is what's driven this new stage and process that we're witnessing now, in that we've got to generate images to tell stories. And I think previously that was done by many great cinematographers who are sitting here, who I've drawn on all of their, collective ideologies and image making. And I think there's a real new interest in the investment in TV. And, Audra's very kindly asked me to come and talk about that inception, that trigger point, that where is there a difference between high-end cinema and now high-end TV? And I think there's a melding, there's a real moment where we're all allowed to really show our craft with the advent of new technologies, streaming, and it comes back to the fact that I was sitting there thinking, I've never seen this on this screen. And I'd say that the process going to do those images would be the same as if I was exploring that same story in an hour and 40 minutes. So tonight's essay or conversation is really about whether we want to, as cinematographers, explore those stories in 10 hours. And it's a fascinating investment that I've made in the last 3 years, because suddenly there is more money, there are more platforms, there are, directors, actors who all want to tell their stories over a longer narrative. And where does the quality stand up? Definitively by these new TV channels, these new platforms are allowing us to tell stories over a longer time span. And I think that as creatives, we should embrace that.
So how would you approach the cinematography on a television drama differently to a feature film? Because essentially we're getting to the point, we've very much arrived at that point over the last few decades, really, where television is being shot on used to be 35 and Alexas, and recently the Alexa 65s, even for TV drama, for the new sort of Disney streaming services, and the Sony Venice and the Arri LF. These are all very much kind of, grown-up cameras that are designed for, frankly, delivering on
big screen,
big screens, therefore, as cameramen, we're all trained in a certain way. Mm-hmm. Or sorry, cinematographers, we're all trained in a certain way, and for us, a blocking is a blocking, a camera is a camera, a gaffer is a gaffer. You all work with your crew in a very set way. And how do you approach, say, a high-end, a big TV production versus, say, a feature film?
I mean, I think there's no difference in the, when you're dealing with a $70 million show, as this one we've just seen, you've got to go in there full bore. There's no half attempt at saying it's, TV. You've got Warner's now, big Hollywood studios, dumping money into the DC universe. That's got to make money. So I think the process is super collaborative, and the idea that, for me, that was really, really interesting is that if you're taking an American system, you can't, or you're not allowed by the producers to shoot the whole show. Taboo I was. Steve Knight delivered 10 scripts, So you can sit down and then you arc with 3 directors or 2 directors on taboo. But you're the continuity with the production designer. Mm-hmm. So you're the through flow and you're the backbone of that show. And that responsibility is inherent when you have those scripts, but the American system doesn't allow you to do that. But what it does positively allow you to do is you collectively all make this show 10 hours long, maybe with 3 DPs. And that has its issues along the line. You know, as image makers, we all want to put our stamp on what we do, but you got to think outside that. You know, if you're lead DP on a show, that's fine, that's set with the directors, but why not be a collective? Why not be Magnum? Why not be an agency? Why not have 5 of the best DPs currently working on that circuit to create something visually exciting? You know, I mean, that wasn't very cerebral, what you're looking at. TV has such a range, but maybe something wants to eat a bit of candy, be entertained, the script's good, and make it look good. And that basically was the brief.
And so when when you're looking at an overall image, obviously they've brought you in for the pilot and the first block,
Yeah.
as which is the sort of TV terminology for breaking episodes into sort of bite-sized chunks.
Yeah.
And I suppose the one of the reasons why cinematographers aren't allowed to shoot entire series, even that we both have. But it's generally quite rarefied.
Yeah.
It's a quite a rarefied thing, and they tend to be for standalone limited series, something that's designed to go on for
6.
multiple series. They like to get everyone into a groove of kind of collaboration, essentially. But when you tackle a pilot episode, which has so much responsibility, and talking about working with other cinematographers, do you read, or at least because a lot of the time the scripts aren't written, I would have thought, for the whole thing. But do you make yourself aware of the entire story arc and the whole outline, so you can kind of take certain things into consideration?
So for example, that's a DC universe. It's 60s. I always wanted to photograph a 60s, period. You then talk to this new level of showrunner who is the writer, and then you have to very quickly learn that he has the vision, and your reference material comes in. How do you visually create that look? You know, especially on this, because you had to so align yourself to that American DC ideology, and yet he's saying, I don't want anything to be like Gotham.
Yeah.
You know, because it's British. You know, it's its own standalone piece. There's no masked crusaders. So you have that opportunity, but the showrunners, this new level of creative, I suppose they're head creative in any show. That's who you have to listen to, and then what happens is with the production designer and yourself, you get all of that creativity in a pot, shake it about, and make sure that visualizes itself, hopefully for the showrunner.
So Alfred Pennyworth as a character, and I'm a bit of a geek as far as comic book stuff is concerned. I apologise about that, but so he's been around since 1939. For those of you that don't speak nerd, basically, but and he, as we all know, he's Batman's butler, right? So you've got this source material of comic books and graphic novels, and recently extremely successful movies, and they all hark back to the source material, of Bob Kane, essentially. And did you find yourself doing that? Did you find yourself looking at getting inspiration from any of the other pictures or any of the other graphic novels? Because they do range from quite bright and fluffy to the darkest of dark. And
Yeah, so that massively, I've
Yeah.
always read comic books, so that how do you pull that narrative into an English or a UK sensibility? Because the showrunner who did work on Gotham, but they wanted to create something individual to the UK. And I think that's interesting because, a lot of us here don't know where to access that. And then that leads back to, these new platforms. How are we to tell these stories? How do we make them available? I wouldn't say that anybody here would know that it's on that platform, and it's gone under the radar. And maybe this has a slow growth, much like Game of Thrones. You do 3 seasons. There's a zeitgeist, that there's a piece of, frisson that people suddenly go, oh, look at this, and then it all kicks in on these new media, social platforms. Right, let's get it. I think that's how it's put out to the media, which is very much different. And what I see as part of tonight's conversation is, you got 20 million sterling on an independent, and that's what we all used to go to the cinema. Well, my age, used to go and watch, but now, with the advent of super hardware in your home living room, good sound, we can all try and see these images that are being created by all of us in its absolute best. And yet, can it, to me, sitting there tonight, is it going to hold up? And yes, it does. So the approach to it is not about technically, is it going to work, or it's again a collaboration between all of those heads of department and all those teams that drive a story. Because if it's not interesting, it's not going to work.
So there's obviously some pretty striking visuals in that. Some very kind of, what I would like to call quite comic book sort of homage sort of photography, essentially. The sort of thing you would see in a Frank Miller or a Bob Kane, graphic novel.
It was kind of a push against that, because I wouldn't. The showrunners have such a hold on that you've got to sway a bit, and you want to put your style on it, but then you're having to do the homage to that piece, and I think that's where TV falls into the line of, we're creating a showrunner show. Yes, we've got good production designers, costume designers, DPs who are going to align themselves, but it's still a homage to the showrunner. And that's, I suppose, a bit of a difference to when you would take on board a feature. So for me, going back to the States this summer and doing a story about, immigrants at the southern border of Mexico, was again utterly freeing, because it's so different. I'm like sitting there every morning thinking, I've got 90 pages. Is that all I've got to do? And I think if you can switch it up and change it up and keep yourself fresh, then you can go forward.
So let's talk about a bit of sort of collaboration with the production designers, or the director. Let's start with the director, and also this you've heard the term showrunner. I'm sure a lot of you guys in the room know what a showrunner is. But they're essentially a kind of arch kind of writer that basically really navigates the story over the entire series, and also navigates the director as well, as well as all the key creatives. So talk a bit about that. When you're kind of discovering a look, because you set the pilots, you're setting the tone of the show, you're setting the style, you're setting very much how what you're going to expect for the next 10 hours or 9 hours after this.
Yeah.
How did you talk a bit about the collaboration with the production design?
So historically, pilots have always been, the stamp where that's the flavour that you're going to get into, and then as the DP on the show, you then have to arc it over 4 directors. So every block you have somebody different, and it's quite amazing witnessing it from the other side, because with 4 directors, they'll cover me and you talking in a completely different way.
Yeah.
And yet they can't go too off-piste, because then it's going to jump narratively, visually over the 10 episodes. So that's what's so interesting about this new era of 10 hours of content, is that who demands the constant, who sees where that show is. So yes, as lead out DP, you get to put the look into place, and then sometimes you're battling DPs who are hired lower down the chain to keep it all in, because we all want to put our mark on it, but you can't have episode 6 looking wildly different to episode 7,
of course, yeah.
Unless it was written that way. So, and some shows do that, and they do take that into embrace. But I think that's like interesting.
And do you have a kind of established sort of conduit to those men and women to kind of guide them, and do they collaborate with you? Do they call back to you? And
Yeah,
say,
I think coming back
what
on
do you use
season
for Moonlight, or for how would you tackle this? Or because I've noticed, I've watched, I've started to watch these series, and I've noticed there's quite a few repeat locations as well.
Okay,
and,
that's
and
interesting.
I've got far enough into the series where another cinematographer's taken over.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how they tackle
a scene.
Well, not just a scene. They tackle the same location
In a
that
different way.
has to have a continuity.
Yeah.
And respect what you've done in the past. However, as we all do, try and maintain your own stamp. As a
Yeah, and I think that's the change, isn't it? Because as heads of department, you have a vision, but then you have to listen to your fellow collaborators, because that's the exposition of the show. If the narrative gets a bit darker, and Sam McCurdy comes and says to me, I feel that we need to take it down in that room because that's the way that it goes, then yeah, by all means, go and do it. But I'm going to shoot it all handheld today. Well, that ain't going to work. That's not going to. It's going to jump, and so the showrunner, the production designer, and the DP have to formulate a work ethic on how to deliver to the studio a piece of content that lasts 10 hours, and that's really interesting. 10 hours.
And I suppose you've got to have a bit of restraint as well, because there's a lot of, you're essentially in the universe of the Batcave. So, when you think to yourself, well, I'm essentially lighting, Batman before he was even conceived. It's, you've got a bit, you're dealing in that world where a lot of fun can be had, because it's Batman at the end of the day. Let's face it. I mean, it is Batman. Did that ever kind of strike you, and you kind of thought, well, I can have some serious fun with this, and I can have steam coming out the pavements. And this
we tried to do that, and yet the directors wanted to veer away from that, and I don't know whether, or the showrunner didn't want to. Because they came from a Gotham universe, if we're going to get geeky about the whole thing. And yet for me, I don't see London 1970s in any way stylized. And yet what I've seen on screen tonight is quite stylized.
The neon London,
the neon,
Sohos,
so it kind of works, and then you get to that grid where it all shakes out.
And so, technically, when approaching this show, what were your choices as far as your tools?
For me, it was go back to the lens. So Panavision always provide that. You have a whole
And what
palette
What
of
glass did you use?
PV vintage, so it's old lenses from the 70s.
And was that to, because you're making a period picture, so was that to try and imbue a period look within the show?
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so.
Or
But it's always for
did
me.
you test it all? And
Yeah, we
tested
had about
stuff.
3 days of testing on a TV show. I think I knew what the flavour combination was, the cocktail. I think that's very interesting now, and going forward, into this new realm of resolution that you can get very technical. I tried to push season 2 forward to shoot large format, but the money wasn't there. And that was very interesting because I think how you hold up an old lens from the 60s, which we've been resolving onto photochemical, and then going onto a chip, it does something slightly different.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
And I think that's what you're seeing now. So I'd say it's worth testing that. And also, the whole workflow process with your DITs, live grade on set. How are you going to instill a look right the way to the top of these studio networks?
So for live grading, for anyone that doesn't know in the audience, is basically where you kind of output from the camera as raw as humanly possible, and instead of using a LUT, you essentially hand over to your DIT next to you, who mixes the grade in front of you, and it's quite a rudimentary grade. It's kind of 3 channels, but you can do quite a lot, can't you? You can't do kind of secondary windows or anything like that, but you can really give it quite a strong look. You can, if you say, for example, this scene, I want to be bleach bypass look. If you can do that,
and it can go horribly wrong.
As
I'm seeing on this.
Yeah,
on season 2.
I've been opening up
It's
on an
not
iris,
good
and
always.
my DIT's been closing down, and
Yeah.
you just think, hold on a minute, my meter's saying go home, you need to watch out a little tiny bit. But talk a bit about how you use live grade for this, and
I think that process is interesting. I think the most important thing is that everybody from onset, looking at monitors right the way through to the 3D Combox, all gets the idea of where you're going to go in the final process. It's been an interesting ride this season, coming back to a season 2. How do you come back to a season 2? Yeah, I want to be here in the UK with my children. That's important, but also you want to push it a little bit forward, visually. They didn't like that. It's been utter Armageddon for the past 4 weeks, trying to explain to people that it's not baked in. Why is it really blue, Mark? It's not really blue, but I like that.
But one thing, because it gives you, like anything, with great power kind of comes great responsibility with the whole kind of image side of things. And it's, you often, it's a tool that you can get carried away with because it's designed to be, it's a creative tool. So you want to be creative with it, but you can suddenly turn, costume department, they can suddenly, lose their mind. Or
they do lose their mind.
Yeah.
Everybody loses their mind. It's been a nightmare this week to tell them just to say, it's fine, we'll go back to your nice little look. And I wish I'd never instrumented it. But, speaking to the heads that, but we had a really successful show, why have you changed it? Well, I haven't really changed it, I'm just tweaking a few things. And then you get back into the colour grade and you can switch it all back. But I think you're allowed to do that. We'd never been able to do that previously in a photochemical process, and so why not try and push the image forward and see if it works? Ride the producers for a bit. and see where you get to. They're going to put you back in your box pretty quickly. But I think, at least they've seen a glimpse of what could happen.
And so when you set out for some of the kind of set pieces in Pennyworth, how did you approach those? Did you because TV can be quite an organic process purely because of time. So it's always good to go in with a plan, and then it sometimes it does literally just turn into toilet paper. And do you storyboard? How did you work?
I've got quite a lot of Warner Brothers toilet paper in my backpack at the moment. I work with it depends on how the directors work, really.
Sure.
They'll because you're shooting 7 pages a day, and yet they're demanding the content.
Yeah.
You come across some directors who are fully prepped and who'll give you a structure, or then they lean on you to give them that structure. And I think that's a new thing, because you might not have ever worked with those directors before and developed those relationships which pushed what we do so far forward. And historically, directors have a very strong relationship with their DPs. So
because Danny Cannon comes from a film background, doesn't he? I mean,
yep.
And quite a comic booky, very look, he makes very kind of looky.
Yeah,
sort of image based.
It's what is DC? Danny Cannon way? I don't know. But did you do any previs or storyboards or? No, Danny's fluid on set.
Yeah.
There is very little prep with Danny, but you get a result. He's been doing it TV for a lot of years, so it's that way. And I was thinking, wow, how is this going to evolve? And yet it kind of works, but it's formulaic because he knows he's got to make his day. You haven't got the time to faff around. And I think coming from the background that I was brought up in, I think you can model the light, but when you're doing 7 pages and they're demanding the quality of the look, you got to have a game plan in your head. Your gaffer's got to know what you like.
Yeah, you've got to be super prepared.
And I think that's difficult for them then, because your crew are the continuous over the 92 days of shooting. But they're coming against different working practices every day, or at the end of the 22 days. They're getting a switch out crew. I go back to the office and.
No, of course. Well, I've inherited a crew on a later block, and it's like walking into The Walking Dead. And you think, how in God's name am I going to do 7 pages?
So then you have to G them up.
Yeah. No, of course. Yeah.
You got to get them in. Get them excited.
So, how did you approach the sort of flashback jungle? Is it Malaysia?
Yeah, Malaysia. Well,
because I bet you they didn't fly you out to Malaysia for
no,
that.
no. We were in a small wood in Langlebury. But we need to see steam, Mark. Yes, it'll be fine. Greens people, I think.
Earned their money that day.
Yeah, really earned their money that day. Director screaming at you, why isn't there enough light in the trench? I think you'll find there is, Danny. But, that's the challenge and that's the excitement. How do you make a small wood in Bedfordshire look like Malaysia today?
How do you make a small wood in, tell us how you did it.
Don't light it. Keep it really minimal.
Keep it dark.
So yeah, keep it dark. And then you have all of the nightmares that come along the next day. We can't see anybody. Okay, but if we see too much, we're going to know that there's 4 trees only in the background, and they're deciduous.
They're out of focus.
Yes.
Yeah, I can spell out of focus.
Leaves
I can't
don't
spell
really
deciduous.
fall off trees in Malaysia. Or maybe they do this week.
So, your A-camera operator was Mr. Sean Savage,
Oh, Savage.
the great Sean Savage. So, could you, touch on about working with him, how you work with him, with the director, and
Yeah, I was very lucky. I went
what
to
did he bring to the table?
a 50th somewhere in Oxfordshire, and Oh Savage appeared out of the background and said, "I'm quite interested in working with you." And then we got talking, and obviously, I had worked with a few operators.
Do you operate yourself as well, or
Yes, I
from
do.
commercial background?
I've always operated, and then suddenly, you have to, at some point on these big shows, give it up. And I know that's
It's always the best thing to do, by the way.
There's a lot of people who fight it, but I think you've got to give it up because
You
you
have
can
15
really
minutes to light a shot.
you can really concentrate on lighting your shot. So when you have somebody like Sean will tell you he probably wears Mother of Dragons underpants.
He does.
Oh, there it goes. That you have that kind of expertise on your set, you're covered.
Yeah.
And he literally has your storyline covered. So he might come up to you and say, "Look, we need this to tell the story." To have that, you'd be a fool not to have that experience behind you.
Oh,
So your operators are the show, and I must say, I've got
especially someone like Sean. Yeah.
Sean and Matt Winden, who is B camera operator. They're truly inspirational characters who will cover your back, and I think it's so important to have that on these bigger shows because, you always want to operate your own camera, but at some point, Taboo, I operate the camera, but the Americans won't let you do it.
Sure.
They will not let you do it.
I found just from arriving in the States after a month of prep, talking to the production manager, and I discovered that on the tech scouts that they don't allow the operators to come on the tech recce's or the tech scouts, and it was like it being hit with a baseball, because you kind of think to yourself, well, what's the point in, they don't want to be playing catch up on the day. And working with Americans, like you say, is a very, it's a kind of an eye-opening experience. It's brilliant at the same time, absolutely spectacular. So you're given all these resources, but did you have to kind of fight certain battles and try and win certain battles, or
on the operator front? I don't think so, because Sean brings such a calm to your daily workflow that you start to rely on it. You know that you got your back covered. You know that how are we going to get through the day to cover the scenes, and that what you looked at today was pretty much an ode to those two boys. It's amazing.
And when you kind of select, once you've kind of discovered that language, that shooting style, and that your close-up lens is this and your wide lens is that, is it something that you kind of instinctively all work out together?
Yeah.
Is there a point where you kind of step back and you then talk to your gaffer and let those guys kind of
absolutely
line it up and just do what they do? But
yeah, because now you got the language, now you got the look of the show, so it's so different than going and shooting the picture in the States, because you're back on, oh my God, I've got to actually do something. But the language between you all on a day-to-day basis is something, when you're doing 120 days on Pennyworth, everybody gets into it, but you don't want to rely on that, but they know what the etiquette is, by day 20. So then you're in. And then once that happens, then you got to keep that going, because they've got to keep that going for another 100 days.
Sure. And was there any particular sequence within the pilot that offered you any memorable challenges that you can... there must be one, surely. We all have them.
Maybe, yeah, the night I was coming back from Langlebury, trying to make Malaysia look like Malaysia with 4 trees, and the producer going, "What have you been doing?" So that was quite a and you're sitting in your car, soaking wet from rain machines, and you're thinking, really?
How did you achieve the artillery fire? Was that lightning strikes?
Yeah, lightning strikes, and then added CG work. So I'd say that was the most demanding one, because they were wondering whether I was going to come back on day 7. But you have to resolve those issues,
Yeah.
And especially coming from it was very interesting working with Danny, and those big set 2s out at Millennium Mills, and he's going, "Well, where are your lights?" And I'm like, "Well, there's a big one back there." And he says, "Yeah, but we need more light." And I went, "No, we'll only switch them off." So it was those battles, and then making them believe that that's your vision, and then them thanking you 6 months down the line in the grade. That's worth the battle. I think that's really good.
Very good. Very good. So I think we're going to open the floor to some questions. Yes, if we can.
If there are any questions.
If there are any questions. There's one here, then Mr. Souter.
Hello, thank you for coming. I'm curious on what characteristics you were looking for when you tested the lenses, and what made you pick the set that you went with in the end. Thank you.
Yeah, being technical, I think I tested those on a couple of commercials with 3 or 4 sets, and I've known that P Vintage had been recently rehoused by Panavision, and the format going onto these new digital sensors. I knew that would be the mix. So we tested 2 or 3, and because they'd worked in that era, how do you marry that to a new digital sensor? It did work once you, down the workflow, worked out that with a bit of a tweak in the DI, you can give it a look. And I think each story has a different aesthetic to tell, and it's got to start from the lens. And I'm not inherently wedded to any one lens or lens set, but the most important thing you've got to understand is that it's got to tell the story. So just test and make sure that you're given the time to test.
And you tested however many sets. Was that the set of the same the vintage glass? Because they're all slightly different, aren't they?
No, yeah. Well, yeah. It was that they offered that, and went on, and Arri do the same, Panavision do the same. They'll give you 4 different things or flavors you want to construct, and you work with the knowledge of what you've, and I think that's why commercials and shooting content, and then going forward, learning that no sets are important, but there's a feeling that you get with one thing, and you can test and try. So there's no way I was going to use those lenses on the feature that I shot out in the States. There's never a question of shooting anamorphic and spherical now. That would have been when I was a focus puller, and I was a rubbish focus puller. it would have been an absolute no-no to mix spherical and anamorphic, and yet the picture that I'm grading at the moment is it works, you know. So the opportunities out to young cinematographers out there is, I'd just say, you know, open up a relationship with your rental houses, and they should service you, and that's really important, you know. And go with whatever inspires you for photographically, because they will have the answer, and then you can make the cocktail.
Very good. Mr. Souter?
Yes.
Oh, wait for the microphone, sorry. We're recording sound, sir.
Basically, I just want to say the continuity on your lighting I thought was superb.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That means
The other side of it is obviously the lighting side, and the operating side. We spoke about that.
Yeah.
And I know what you mean. I really do.
Yeah.
There was one area we haven't got onto. You nearly brought it up then, focus pullers.
Yeah.
And I think that's such an important area.
Yeah, I mean,
So many people don't realise how you've got to go through the mill with focus. And I just think what you've got is quite unique. I mean, I don't know your focus pullers from Adam, but they're bloody good.
well, because I was so rubbish, Derek. You know, what's apparent now is that because the sensors are so light sensitive and the lenses are so fast that you can light to 1.3, but I was never ever taught that. So I kind of like to 4 because I know that's where I fell apart with when I was being trained up by your generation, and that you couldn't light to anything beyond that. So your ratios have to be that. And then the boys at the coal face are not lighting, you know, pulling focus to 1.3 on these sensors. It doesn't make sense. So on drama, with directors only doing 2 takes, you're not going to get another chance as a mistake on focus. And those 2 that, you know, or 3 that I use are remarkable. But I'm giving them the stop on these new pieces of technology to allow them to achieve that, because especially on TV and news, again, it's very interesting seeing. Normally I wouldn't, if I knew that the show was going to be shot for cinema, I wouldn't do the close-ups of you've seen tonight, but it was spot on, and they're resolving that, you know, and I think it's an important, but again, I was really, really lucky to be trained right at the point of the flux from film to digital. Yeah. So that's where the ratio comes from.
It's so nice that you actually are looking after your focus pullers.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you.
Especially you touched upon that at Series 2 you were exploring the large format route, which is becoming exceptionally sort of seductive for cinematographers because pictures from it look so great.
It's
However,
medium format, isn't it?
It's medium format. However, or essentially it's large. Yeah, it's medium format. But you have to also take into account the responsibility that a cinematographer has to embark on a show using that format, because you have to take the reflection on your lighting budget, on your crew, like your focus puller, things like that. And when you're working under more stress than what someone's used to, then they're very important decisions to be made. And there was a point, where when I was kind of growing up, TV was shot on 16 and film was shot on 35, and you essentially, it sounds slightly crass, but you kind of had TV focus pullers and you had feature film focus pullers. And now, if you've got TV being shot on large format, then where does that throw the mix? So it's just food for thought anyway. A question at the back.
I'll pass it down. G'day. There were a number of sizable scenes set in daylight with great shape, and I'm wondering what your approach is to achieving that within obviously schedule and budget, and what are the tools that you have to achieve that?
In daylight, I think it's working in the pre-production stages of when you want to shoot those particular scenes, and then being told you're not allowed to shoot them at Magic Hour or at the end of the day, and then trying to work out, how your wides are going to work, and then model and then come in and model the close-ups. I think you always want to do your exteriors at the right time of day, but you might plan for something and then get a completely different thing. So I think you've got to react to that. And it's very easy to say, exteriors, you're not using any light, but you've got to have the tools there. And I must say, I don't normally put a kicker on that opening scene in Brompton Cemetery. I'd never put a kicker on your artists all the time. But on this particular show, because of the look and the way that it had to be, in some sense, stylized, you had to light it. You had to give it shape. And I think as a cinematographer and as a DP, you've got to listen to, your director. And if he has that vision, and you might want to push back against your normal instinct, that's what I've learned over this past year, is that give it a go. Do listen, do collaborate, and you might get a result that, because that's not normally how I would have done it, but yet I kind of like it. So, be open.
How frequently did you run 2 cameras, just out of interest?
All the time.
All the time?
Minimum.
Oh, really? Okay.
So it's a minimum of 2, sometimes 3, and on the bigger days 4.
Wow.
So, but I think, again, I'm very lucky to have, worked with some great directors that there is no other language than up 4.
I think it's...
So how that's where I've come from, so I have to deliver.
I mean, that instead of the mentality of hose it down, on just
it's select.
It's directors that actually understand how to shoot with multiple cameras, sympathetic to
Absolutely,
to the
because
image.
they'll say the crane's going to come down in my B camera, and they're going, it doesn't matter about that because I'll be on the A camera.
Exactly, yeah.
So you can't, if you're going to do multi-camera, they're not all going to be beautiful images all the time. It's the director directing you to say that, don't worry, I'll never be on that shot until you actually see it. You promised me that it wasn't going to, but no, I think that's I think that's where I've come from, so that's the style.
Yeah, well, so especially working with Ridley Scott. I mean, Ridley famously uses multiple cameras.
I think that's where that came from, and there's no...
The chaos.
There's not a lot of room for manoeuvre on that one.
So, Christina, you're at the back there.
I'm afraid the beautiful Ash might have beaten me to it with an alternative phrasing of my question, but I'm going to spit it out anyway. And I was just so mesmerised by how you captured such a dreamy grey haze and open sequence with such bright autumnal colours. And I was just fascinated to know how you achieved such simultaneous beauty in that first shot.
I think I was really lucky that last autumn was so colourful. Yeah. For some reason, it was like candy on the trees.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that on season 2. It's been your usual dreary London grey. And honestly, last year every time we went out, it was pure joy to photograph. So I think it was very lucky, and as soon as that started happening, then you could put the dial in the colour on the grade, and that was accepted. So
It really resonated on the screen.
yeah, it was.
Mark. It
Thank
was
you. It was
beautiful.
a combination of being super lucky.
So on that note, what was a build and what was sort of repeat location, so to speak? What did you build in the
Nightclubs a repeat.
Yep.
Pennyworth House a repeat. What else was a bit? The pub. What else was a set? Oh, Martha's apartment. Did you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. So pretty much all the sets were a build at Leavesden. So we got 4 stages at Leavesden, and again that goes back. That's 4 stages at a major, studio.
Yeah.
They're throwing money at it.
The curve having Warner Brothers behind you, I suppose. isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, massive. So that to have that resource of what I think is an amazing studio at your beck and whim is you've got to put it out there. It's like
Brilliant. Yes, Mr. Walters.
I'd be very interested to know, you talked about working on 10 episodes.
Yeah.
And the difficulty of getting episode 7 to look like episode 8. Am I correct in saying that you're not the cinematographer for all 10 episodes?
correct. So I would lead out, and so out of the 10, I would do 6.
How was your collaboration then with the cinematographer who did the other episodes?
So then you'd interview, and you'd put forward a list, and then Sam McCurdy and Jake Polonsky came on board, and they were very collaborative in that process. So that's what's so interesting, is that you're becoming a collective, which is, for me, the very essence of what I've always thought, that it's not one person. It's never one person who has 10 hours of visual input. And they brought something unique to their episodes, but it was all discussed and shaped. And I really enjoy that process of this new realm that we're in of episodic TV.
I'm not clear. I'd be very interested to know your background prior to your commercial life and whatever. How did you become what you are?
Well, there you go. I did environmental science, and I was a conservationist on the South Downs, and Maggie Thatcher took all the funding away, but I was, creating, I suppose, photography for the county council, and that's when I intrinsically got involved in photography. And I was sitting in a small shepherd's hut on the top of a cliff looking at my navel, thinking,
As you do.
this isn't going very far. And I had to then come to London. And that's at that point, I was very lucky to fall into working as a bike courier. So I had no formal training with my photography at film school or anything, but I started taking notes on sets and working with some amazing director of photography, and that inspired me to then build up a visual notebook almost, and that's kind of where I learnt my trade.
And you're
exposed.
You're using the term directors of photography there, which is something which we are having a big debate about at the moment, because we are cinematographers. We are not. We are responsible for the motion pictures, the motion images, and not. The director of photography seems to imply a single image, a man who goes out and shoots a single photograph. So we're trying to work out trying to work into the cinematography, the use of the word cinematography to describe our profession.
Yeah, and I think I suppose it was narratively trying to tell the story. I've always been interested in story, so when it came about that, I'd come from the bottom up, and watching, my peers make images through moving image, I realised that's quite a good thing to get into, and it combines so many skills and enables so many people around you to make that image. That's what I wanted to feel, that joy, to be allowed to make other people help me see what I see. And I think that's the most important thing that I've learned. It's been a very rewarding experience.
And your relationship with Ridley Scott, was that developed through the commercials and RSA and Jake Scott and into?
Yeah, I don't think he still recognises me. There's some very funny stories. I suppose I could tell now, but then they'll be forever enamoured of
embedded in the film. Yeah.
Yeah, I might not go there.
We'll leave that to the bar afterwards, shall we? Yeah, any other questions? Oh, another one from Christina.
It's really important because I live in the South Downs, so I'm just wondering where this naval base resided way back when.
Oh, no naval base. It was at Cookman
No, I'm
Haven.
just joking. She said you're looking at your navel.
Oh no, I was looking at my navel because that's always getting bigger. So yeah, no, it was a small hut on Cookman Haven.
Okay,
Yeah.
I had to know because it's
there
my
you go.
home. Thank you.
Jolly good. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. And any other questions? We've got one last one over here before we unite at the bar.
I just wanted to know, so in terms of like prepping for features and things like that, you have so many sort of days for a feature.
Yeah.
You might prep all the lighting and know what you're going to do every day in the shot lists, and you can be super prepared. But for something like this that's spread over so many days, is there only so much prep you can do before you're sort of slapped in the face and you're like, oh, that's a curveball, because
it just becomes it becomes very narrowed.
Yeah.
So you could become honed, and those people around you are looking after you. So you'd kind of have 11 days prep, and it all becomes very compressed on TV. Whereas you then go, and I stepped out and I had 42 days to prep, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So then you make the use of that time, but the pressures that I've learned in this new, big TV is that, you pull on all of your resources and compress all of those things that have formulated you, because you've got to deliver a really good image and a good story in a compressed time. And you rely on all of your compatriots to help you achieve that. And I love the collective. I love the collaboration. And I think that's the most thing that I've drawn from, is that people want to help you.
You have to make sure you have to have a lot of tools in your bag, as it were, in terms of, right, instead of picking and choosing what days I'm going to have this Technocrane or whatever, you just try and say, like, can we have it all the time?
No, not at all.
Right.
No, the money guys will say, no, you've got 3 days of crane. So then you have to choose when you want to use those tools. Whereas on a big picture, you're carrying it with you all the time.
Sure.
And so what that learns is that you sharpen your edge. And when you go onto a big picture and they go, well, you don't need that, they're like, well, why don't you need that? Well, I don't need it. So, you choose your moments.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone. Oh, sorry, we've got another question. Yeah.
It kind of relates to this, and I wanted to ask it earlier.
Sure.
Hello. It kind of relates to this when you were talking about working with the different directors, and some directors turn up with, you know, a full list of ingredients and you've had it for days, and then some guys turn up and they're just like, right, okay, this is what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
So, like, how does that affect your shooting schedule when you're doing 7 pages a day and the guy hasn't given you much forewarning of what's going to happen, and then he turns around and says, right, we want the camera coming in like this, and you're like, well, I haven't got the crane today, mate. So
I think that comes down to, you know, super collaboration with your AD. So I have a very tight relationship with, in the pre-processes, that would go through that script intimately, and then you know exactly what scenes you need to. There's not a day where you don't know exactly what's going to go in. You've got to know that, otherwise you're not going to survive. You're going to be hit out the park. On a TV show, if you don't know exactly what's coming at you that morning, you're done.
So irrespective of who the director is?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You're leading that out.
Okay.
7 pages a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also thought it was a really nice touch with the Micklewhite Avenue. I thought it was a nice touch.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mark Patten BSC, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Stellar work.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
Stand up there. Yeah, little fucking go in. Yeah, get it in there.